The sun hadn't broken through the trees yet. Pinegrove Forest lay in a heavy silence, wrapped in fog so thick it blurred the line between earth and sky. It was the kind of morning that felt untouched, untouched by time, untouched by people, until something cut through it. A sound, thin, cracked, not the cry of a bird or the rustle of wind through pine needles. It was deeper, coarser, a whimper, soaked in pain, desperate but already fading, the kind of sound that doesn't ask for help anymore. It just mourns that help never came. Beneath a weathered oak tree, her fur matted with dirt and blood, a Malinois mother lay curled around nothing. Her ribs pushed through thinning skin. Her eyes barely blinked. Her leash, frayed and stained, wrapped tightly around the tree's base, chewed halfway through, the nylon slick with spit and blood. She had a name once, but now she was just this, bone and breath and instinct. Just 10 feet away, 2 tiny pups dangled inside a cracked garbage crate, suspended by fishing line and duct tape. They didn't move. Their bodies barely twitched. Whoever did this hadn't meant for them to survive. It was cruel in a way that required thought. The mother, who we will come to know as Nova, had been trying to reach them. The ground around her was torn, clawed in every direction. Her teeth were raw, her mouth stained dark from hours of gnawing the rope. Her paws were bloody stumps. But she hadn't stopped, not when it hurt, not when it became impossible. Until now. She lay still, not because she gave up, but because there was nothing left to give. And that's when Reina appeared. She wasn't supposed to be there. Her car had broken down 5 miles back. She'd left it behind, hoping to catch a signal or a stranger or some stroke of luck. She wasn't looking for anything more than a way out of her own thoughts, memories that snapped like rubber bands when she breathed too hard. But when she stepped out from the bend in the trees and saw the garbage crate, the unmoving pups, the trembling shape tied to the tree, everything inside her stopped. Reina froze. The dog didn't move. The pups didn't make a sound. Reina's boots sank into the soft earth as she stepped closer. She didn't speak. Words would have broken whatever fragile moment this was. She knelt slowly, her fingers shaking. The cold seeped through her jacket, but she didn't feel it. Her eyes locked with the dog's, deep, hollow, ancient eyes. Not pleading, not afraid, just waiting. And then just for a moment the mother closed her eyes, not in surrender, not in fear, but in something that looked a lot like trust, like she was saying, "I've been waiting for you." Before Reina found her in the woods, before the name Nova was spoken aloud in a quiet clinic, before the blood and the wire and the garbage crate, she was called Maple. It was the name whispered by a boy named Lucas, spoken with a voice that cracked at the edges, like he wasn't sure he deserved to say it out loud. He was 15, quiet, fragile in ways the world didn't see. His anxiety wasn't loud or obvious. It lived in the silence, in the way his hands fidgeted under the table, in the way he flinched when doors slammed too hard. His mother bought him Maple on a spring afternoon when the house felt heavy and the air felt thin. She was a birthday gift, handed over in a blue blanket from the back seat of a neighbor's car. Her ears were too big for her face, her legs too wobbly for her body. But when Lucas held her, something shifted. He didn't smile. Not yet. But he didn't look away either. Maple became his anchor. She slept beside him every night, nose pressed to his chest, rising and falling with each shallow breath. When the panic came, fast and for no reason, she'd sit beside him, unmoving, patient. She didn't try to fix it. She just stayed, and that was everything. Lucas's house was quiet in all the wrong ways. His stepfather was a man of rules and clenched jaws. His mother tried to smooth things over with smiles that never reached her eyes. The walls were thin. The anger wasn't always shouted, but it was always there, curling beneath the surface like a coiled wire. Maple learned early what silence meant in that house, when to hide, when to place herself between Lucas and the footsteps coming up the stairs. She didn't bark, she didn't run, she just stood between him and the world, tail low, eyes steady. They were inseparable. Lucas talked to her more than anyone else, read books aloud to her on the porch, doodled her name in notebooks. She knew his rhythms better than he did. But even loyalty can't outrun what's coming. It happened just after midnight. Lucas had taken too many bruises that week, too many slammed doors, too many nights listening to his mother cry when she thought he couldn't hear. That night, the storm outside matched the one inside. When his stepfather's voice turned sharp and his mother's silence turned into retreat, Lucas grabbed Maple, shoved his sneakers on with shaking hands, and climbed into the old Buick parked behind the garage. He didn't have a license, didn't have a plan, just had her, and the desperate belief that somewhere had to be better than here. They didn't make it far. Rain-slicked roads, a bend taken too fast, tires skidding, a sickening crunch of metal and glass, and screams that never got to finish. Lucas died on impact. Maple didn't. She crawled from the wreckage, limping, her side torn. She circled the car 3 times, pawed at the crumpled door, whimpered low. When the flashing lights came, she didn't run. She sat beside his body, eyes fixed, like maybe if she waited long enough, he'd breathe again. But he didn't. And no one asked her name. There was no collar, no microchip, just a shaking, blood-speckled dog no one claimed. She was tagged, scanned, and quietly handed off to a man who ran a kennel out in the country. No questions asked, no records kept. The man called her number 47. Her new home smelled of bleach and bile. The cages were stacked on top of each other, wire floors, filthy water. She was bred before her wounds even healed. Her body, once soft and clumsy with youth, became worn, mechanical. Litter after litter. No names, no warmth, just hands that grabbed, cages that slammed, and nights that never ended. Her light dimmed, but it never died. One night a cage latch rusted through, a door swung loose. Rain poured outside, and something in her heart, something ancient and defiant, snapped awake. She ran it, barely breathing, no direction, just away. She ran for 20 miles across ditches and back roads, through barbed wire fences and broken farmland. Her paws bled, her legs buckled, but she didn't stop. She had no name, no boy, no voice, but she had life inside her, and she would protect it. When she finally collapsed beside that old tree in Pinegrove, rain soaking through her fur, the world faded. But even then, as her eyes closed, there was something fierce burning in her chest. A whisper of something not yet gone, a name not yet given, a light not yet lost, a reason to keep holding on. The pipe had cracks in it, deep, jagged splits running like veins through concrete, barely big enough for Nova's body to curl around itself. It stank of rot and rust and stagnant water, but it was the only shelter she had. After the crash, after Lucas, after the cage, after running until her paws bled and her lungs screamed, this broken drainage pipe at the edge of Pinegrove was all that was left, and inside it, new life began. 2 pups, small, shivering, born into dirt and darkness. No heat lamp, no clean towels, just their mother, worn thin, rib bones sharp, breath shallow, licking them into existence with every ounce of strength she had left. She didn't cry, didn't panic, she just worked, like the part of her that used to flinch and tremble had burned away in everything she'd already survived. She lined the pipe with scraps she found, leaves, pieces of moss, one strip of plastic that still smelled faintly of gasoline. She tucked her puppies close, curled her spine around them to block out the wind, and stayed perfectly still for hours, even when her stomach growled, even when her back spasmed. Hunger didn't matter. Pain didn't matter. They were warm, they were breathing. That was enough. When night came, she stayed awake, licking their ears, watching the mouth of the pipe. Every shadow made her shoulders tense. Every footstep in the leaves outside made her rise halfway to her feet before remembering her body couldn't go any farther. And then, on the 3rd day, the food ran out. Nova hadn't eaten in days, but her milk was drying. The pups squirmed more, whimpered against her belly. She knew that sound. She knew hunger, not the kind that just gnawed. It crushed, and she wouldn't let it find them. So she went out. It was dawn when she slipped from the pipe. The forest was quiet. She sniffed the wind, moved slowly, cautiously. Her muscles ached, but instinct pushed her forward. She tracked the scent of spilled fries left by campers. She found a half-buried protein bar under a rotting log, a miracle. She chewed quickly, choked down the wrapper, turned, and bolted back toward the pipe. But when she reached it, they were gone. The leaves were scattered. The moss kicked aside. Her heart stopped before her paws did. She sniffed frantically, darting in circles, nose to the dirt. There, faint scent trails, panic-smeared, dragged along the ground. She followed it, claws tearing at the mud, breath ragged, until she rounded the bend behind the abandoned hunting camp and saw them. 2 tiny shapes, dangling, suspended inside a cracked garbage crate, tied together with duct tape and fishing line like they were nothing. Trash, their limbs limp, their mouths silent. She froze. For half a second she didn't move. Couldn't. Then the scream came. Not from her lungs, but from her soul. A howl so hoarse and guttural it sounded like bone splitting. She lunged forward and was yanked back. A thick zip tie dug into her neck, fastened tight to the base of a nearby tree. She twisted, pulled, bit at it. Her teeth snapped over and over until her gums bled. She scraped the bark, tore her claws, tried to crawl forward inch by inch. But the tie held, and her pups dangled. And time passed. Nova howled until her voice broke, until the muscles in her throat gave out, until her body collapsed, until her eyes burned too much to stay open, and still no one came. One of the pups twitched, just barely. It was worse than death, this waiting, this helplessness. She who had survived the crash, the cage, the cold, she who had run through storms and hidden in shadows, and now she was tied like garbage beside her babies, watching the light drain from them inch by inch. She lay there, gasping, her head on the ground. Her body had gone numb, her heart hadn't. Then footsteps, soft ones, careful. She didn't look up at first, figured it was another cruel hand, another boot to avoid. But the steps slowed, stopped. Then, a woman's voice breaking on the first word. "Oh, my God!" Nova opened her eyes, slowly. Her vision was blurred, but she saw the shape, a figure kneeling, pale fingers trembling. A sling bag dropped in the dirt. A heartbeat, and a scent, not sharp. "Safe, Reina." She didn't speak again right away, just stared at the scene in front of her. Two near lifeless pups, and the mother zip-tied to a tree like she belonged to no one. Her breath hitched. She moved fast after that. Pulled out medical shears, cut the ties around the crate first, caught the pups before they hit the ground. Her hands moved automatically. Check breathing, check heartbeat, rub gently. One pup wheezed. The other was still. Then she turned to Nova. The dog didn't flinch, didn't growl, just blinked, slowly. Reina slid her fingers under the plastic tie. Nova winced, but stayed still. The blade clicked once, and the restraint fell away. Nova didn't rise, she couldn't. But her eyes never left Reina. And Reina, voice cracking, bent lower and whispered, "No one's dying today. Not on my watch." She gathered them all into her arms, the pups wrapped in her scarf. Nova draped across her chest like a broken shadow. The rain began to fall, soaking them all. But for the first time in days, Nova didn't feel cold. The road was slick with rain, the kind that blurred headlights and drowned out thought. Reina gripped the wheel tighter, her knuckles white, the wipers groaning across the windshield in slow, anxious rhythm. Beside her, the two puppies were wrapped in her flannel jacket, barely the size of her hands, tucked into a shallow plastic bin she'd found in the back seat. In the back, Nova lay motionless, her head against the side panel, her eyes half closed, her breath shallow but still there. It was all so quiet, too quiet. There was no cell signal, no GPS, no idea if she was even heading the right way. But Reina kept driving, following nothing but gut and desperation, steering through a maze of country roads that all looked the same. She had no destination, only a promise she had whispered under her breath as she carried them from the woods. "You're not dying today." Then she felt it. Something wrong. She reached over and gently pressed two fingers into the folds of the jacket, searching for the tiny pulses she had felt just minutes before. Nothing. She stopped breathing. "No, no, no, please," she murmured, pulling over so fast the truck's tires skidded into gravel. She threw it into park, flung open her door, and snatched the bundle from the seat. She laid the first pup, the smaller one, on the passenger seat, unwrapped it, and pressed her fingers to its tiny chest. No flutter, no breath. Its body was limp, jaw slack. She didn't think, just moved. One finger on the chest, another two beside it, pressing gently, steadily. Just like she'd learned in school back when she was a vet tech student and CPR for neonates was just theory, not life and death. 1, 2, 3, breathe, she whispered, tears already blurring her vision. She exhaled over the pup's nose, pressed again, watched for any sign. Nothing. She reached for the second pup, slightly larger, same routine. She tried to focus, not panic, not cry. "You can do this, you can do this." And then a squeak, tiny, strained. A twitch under her fingertips, her heart surged. She kept going, one breath at a time. Eventually, the twitch became a weak movement, a suckle. Not enough, but something. She wrapped them both again, gently, reverently, and climbed back into the truck, soaked to the bone but too stunned to feel cold. In the rearview mirror, Nova's eyes were open now, watching her, wide and still. She hadn't made a sound, But Reina could swear there was something in that gaze. A question, maybe? Or maybe an answer. She drove faster, turning down the old highway that led toward the industrial edge of town. It was the only direction she could remember with a clinic still open overnight. That's when she saw the flickering sign. PD'd 24/7. Crooked, rusting, but real. She pulled up with her heart in her throat. Threw the truck into park, opened the back. Nova didn't move. Reina lifted her carefully. She was lighter than she should have been, bones pressing through fur, and carried her in one arm, the pups in the other. The door slammed open. "I need help," Reina shouted into the quiet front desk. A vet tech appeared almost instantly, eyes going wide. "Back room," she said. "Go." The clinic smelled like antiseptic and heat. There were old posters on the walls, outdated furniture, and a box of chew toys in the corner. But to Reina it looked like hope. They placed the pups on warming pads under a heat lamp. The smaller one had started to move again, just barely. A nurse massaged its limbs. The other was stabilized with oxygen and fluids. Nova was laid out on a separate table. Her breathing was ragged, but steady. The vet, an older woman with glasses sliding down her nose, looked up mid-exam. "She's severely malnourished," she said. "Infection risk, burns on her neck, but she's hanging on." Reina nodded numbly. "She's been through worse." The vet paused, then asked gently, "Do they have names?" Reina glanced down at the pups, now curled together under the warmth. She brushed her thumb across the smaller one's side. "That one. Ash," she whispered, "'cause he almost didn't make it, but he came back from the edge." She looked to the other, the stronger one. "And her, Sky, because she deserves to see the sky someday. Not through a cage, not from a hole in the ground." The vet nodded. "And the mother?" Reina turned. Nova was watching her, eyes dark, quiet, endless. Reina stepped closer, placed her hand gently on Nova's head. "She didn't have a name when I found her," she said softly, "but she has one now." The vet waited. "Nova," Reina said, "because she's the last light in all this darkness." No one spoke for a moment. Then the vet said, "That's a good name." Reina didn't leave the clinic that night. She stayed curled in a chair in the corner, wrapped in a towel someone had handed her. Every hour, she checked on Ash and Sky. Every time she touched Nova's paw, the dog didn't pull away. Outside, the storm kept falling. But inside that tiny underfunded clinic, a mother, her two fragile pups, and the woman who refused to give up on them all finally had a name. And finally, a chance. The ICU room at Pet Aid 24/7 was no bigger than a classroom supply closet. Bare walls, flickering fluorescence, a row of kennels along one side, and the steady hum of medical machines that never slept. It smelled of bleach, latex gloves, and something else deeper. Hope, maybe, stretched thin across the seams. This is where Nova and her pups began to heal, and where Reina stayed. She didn't clock in. She didn't expect pay. She didn't even ask. She just showed up. Every morning before the sun, and every night long after the town had gone quiet. Because she couldn't imagine not showing up. The clinic made her a cot in the corner of the break room. She never used it. Not really. Instead, she spent her nights in a folding chair beside Nova's kennel, whispering soft encouragement, feeding Ash and Sky every 2 hours with trembling hands and praying, yes, praying, even though she hadn't in years, that this fragile patchwork family wouldn't unravel. It wasn't easy. The first few days were brutal. Sky had developed pneumonia, the kind that burrowed deep into her chest and clung. Her tiny lungs crackled with every breath. She cried in short, wheezing gasps that shattered Reina's heart every time she heard them. A tube was inserted. Warm mist piped into a covered incubator. Antibiotics were started, but no one could promise anything. Reina sat beside the glass box watching her, whispering stories through the vents about wide-open fields and birds that never stopped flying. Ash, meanwhile, refused to eat. Not from illness, the vet said, but something harder to treat, trauma. He turned his head from the bottle, whined when touched, curled up so tightly into himself that Reina wondered if he could still feel the world at all. She fed him drop by drop with a syringe, tucked a ticking watch beside his blanket to mimic a heartbeat, hummed lullabies she barely remembered from childhood. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it didn't. And Nova? Nova was there, but not there. She flinched every time someone in a white coat walked by, tensed at the sound of rubber soles squeaking against the tile, refused food for the first 2 days, laid stiff on the blanket, eyes wide but blank, as if still chained to that tree, still listening for cries she couldn't answer. But she never growled, never snapped, not once. And when Reina sat beside her, quiet, unintrusive, palms open, Nova would, after a long while, breathe slower. Sometimes she would twitch in her sleep, paws kicking, body shivering, and Reina would rest a hand gently against her back until it passed. When the nightmares were worse, she'd wake with a whimper, eyes glassy. Reina never spoke during those moments. She just stayed. Because that's what Nova had done for Lucas. And what Reina had once wished someone had done for her. The nights blurred. Bottles, med charts, warm towels, soft words. And slowly, like a wound closing from the edges inward, something began to change. Sky's breathing steadied, the rattle in her chest dulled to a whisper. She wagged her tail one morning when Reina walked in and let out a hoarse little bark that startled even herself. Ash, still hesitant, still cautious, took his first few bites on his own. Then he tripped over a blanket trying to chase the tail he didn't know he had. Reina laughed so hard she cried. But it was Nova who broke Reina's heart the most, and then stitched it back together. It happened on a morning like any other. Reina was sitting on the floor, legs stretched out, filling a new bottle for Ash. The light in the room was soft, filtered through the slats of the blinds. Rain tapped lightly on the window. Nova had been watching her, quiet, observing, not afraid, just unsure. Reina didn't notice until she felt it. A paw. Shaky. Resting on her leg. She froze. Nova wasn't looking directly at her, but her head was low, ears back, eyes open, soft. There was no sound, no movement, just touch. And Reina, who had spent months keeping herself together, years building walls around her grief, finally let them fall. She put the bottle down, leaned forward, placed her hand gently over Nova's paw. "You don't owe me anything," she whispered, voice cracking. "But I'm here, and we don't go backward, only forward now." Nova didn't pull away, didn't move at all. But something shifted in that room, like the air remembered how to breathe. From that day on, Nova began to eat, slowly at first, then hungrily. She didn't flinch at every passing coat. She stood when Reina entered, wagged her tail. Only once, only slightly, but it was there. Ash and Sky began to thrive, playful, messy, clumsy. Ash chased Sky's tail. Sky barked at her own reflection in the water bowl. They found each other the way siblings do, bumping and tumbling and curling up together when the world got too big. And Reina found herself smiling again. Not the kind you practice, the kind that reaches your eyes. In that small, dim ICU room patched with towels and plastic bins and exhaustion, something bigger had taken root, a family. Not defined by blood, but by survival, by choice, by love that was earned in the hardest of places. And every time Nova looked up at Reina, every time Ash climbed into her lap or Sky curled around her ankle, it was a reminder. Broken doesn't mean beyond repair. It just means you're waiting for the hands that won't let go. The cabin wasn't much, but it was theirs. Tucked against the edge of a quiet lake, where the water mirrored the sky like a forgotten secret, the little house had peeling white paint, uneven steps, and creaky floorboards that groaned under every footfall. But to Reina, it felt like the first breath after drowning. After everything. Pinegrove, the clinic, the nights of whispered prayers and quiet heartbreak. This was where they started over. She adopted all three officially on a Tuesday. No papers had ever made more sense. Ash, Sky, Nova. No last names, but full hearts. She took every shift she could at the diner in town, worked long mornings serving coffee and eggs to old men with weathered hands and silent wives, and saved enough to pay 3 months' rent up front. Then she packed up everything she owned, which wasn't much, and moved them into the cabin by the lake. The first thing she did was fence the yard. It wasn't pretty, just posts, wire, and sweat. But it wrapped around the back like a promise. You're safe here. You can run, and this time no one will stop you. She built a warm kennel too, even though Nova never used it. She preferred the porch, stretched out in a sunbeam like a queen watching over her kingdom. And above the door, Reina carved a wooden sign. It wasn't fancy, just 3 words, etched with care. Home for Nova. Ash was the wild one. He chased everything, leaves, birds, his own tail. He stole socks from the laundry basket, barked at passing clouds, and once dragged an entire roll of toilet paper through the living room like it was a royal procession. He tripped over his own feet twice a day and never learned to jump without overcommitting. Sky was quieter, softer. She would sit for hours by the back window, just watching the lake, her ears flicking at the sound of wind through trees. She barked less, listened more. And when Ash got too wild, she was the one who nipped his ear and brought him back down to earth. Nova was something else entirely. She didn't play like a puppy, didn't roll or wrestle, but she ran. God, she ran. Fast and silent, streaking across the yard with her ears back, not from fear this time, but from the pure joy of motion, of not being chained, of not hearing a voice yelling "stay," and knowing that if she disobeyed, it would hurt. She ran because she could, and because now someone was waiting when she came back. Reina watched them all with a kind of awe, like someone who'd been handed a second chance she never asked for, but suddenly couldn't imagine losing. She laughed more now, not the polite chuckle she used to offer strangers, but real laughter, the kind that shook her ribs and made her wipe tears from the corners of her eyes. Sometimes it came without warning, like the day Ash got stuck under the couch chasing a tennis ball and refused to back out, so Sky laid down beside him and just waited. Or the time Nova snuck inside during a storm and curled up on the bathroom mat, only to growl softly when Reina tried to use the sink, like she had officially claimed the room. Even in the hard moments, like when Sky had another coughing fit or Nova woke in the middle of the night whimpering through a dream she couldn't shake, Reina didn't falter. She just sat beside them, hand on fur, voice low, presence steady, because she remembered what it felt like to wake up alone. One evening, the lake was still, the sky soft with lavender and pink, the kind of colors that felt too delicate to be real. Reina had just finished dinner. Ash and Sky were asleep in a tangled pile of limbs and twitching paws. The radio was playing something soft and old from the kitchen, and Nova was standing at the door, just standing, staring out. Her tail didn't wag, her ears didn't twitch. Reina paused, wiped her hands on a towel, and stepped outside. Nova didn't turn. Reina stood beside her, following her gaze. The yard stretched out quiet, scattered with toy. Beyond it, the lake shimmered dark and endless. Then slowly Nova leaned her head against Reina's leg. No bark, no sound, just contact. Reina froze. Her hand moved instinctively, settling on the top of Nova's head. It wasn't the first time they'd touched. But this was different. It wasn't need. It wasn't fear. It was trust and peace. A long, silent peace that had taken months and a lifetime to find. Reina felt tears burn at the back of her eyes. She didn't try to stop them. She reached down, knelt beside Nova, and wrapped her arms around the dog's neck. Nova didn't pull away. She pressed in. And Reina, through the lump in her throat, whispered, "We're not leftovers. We're proof that something beautiful can grow from the deepest wounds." That night, Reina didn't sleep much. She stayed on the porch, wrapped in an old blanket, watching the stars blink awake one by one. Ash wandered out at some point and curled beside her. Sky followed, leaning her chin on Reina's knee. Nova stayed where she was, stretched out with her back to the door, her eyes half closed. And Reina sat there, surrounded by the family she never thought she'd not built from blood or plans, but from loss and love and the unspoken decision to stay. They weren't perfect. Ash would probably always bark at his reflection. Sky would always be a little too serious for her age. Nova might never stop waking from dreams with a shiver in her chest. But they had each other now. They had a home, and none of them, not a single one, would ever be alone again. Some lives don't scream for help. They don't beg or plead or cry loud enough to shake the sky. They just exist, quietly, painfully, waiting, hoping, for a pair of eyes that will finally see them. When Reina found her, she wasn't glowing. She wasn't strong. She was broken and bleeding, chained to a tree in the middle of nowhere, watching her world fade breath by breath. But in her eyes, there was still a flicker, not of trust, not yet, but of something deeper. A fire that had no reason to keep burning, but did anyway. That's what Nova was, not a light that gently illuminated, but a fire, fierce, quiet, stubborn, still burning beneath the ash. And Reina? She wasn't wearing a cape. She didn't come armed with answers or grand speeches. She wasn't sent by fate. She was just there, tired, lost in her own grief, running from things she didn't want to say out loud. But when the moment came, when the universe whispered, "Look here," she didn't look away. She didn't say, "This isn't my problem." She didn't say, "Someone else will help." She stopped, she knelt, she reached. And that was enough, because sometimes saving someone doesn't start with a rescue. It starts with staying. It starts with one soul quietly telling another, I see you, you're still here, and that matters. Nova's fire burned on, in her pups, in the home Reina built, in the quiet mornings by the lake, in the laughter on the porch, in the moments no one else would ever witness. But that changed everything. And Reina? She didn't set out to be a savior. She became something better. She became the person who didn't leave. And in a world full of people walking past, that made her a miracle. Because the truth is, not every fire roars. Some just glow, deep and low and steady. But when you tend to it, when you protect it, when you believe in it, even when no one else does, that fire becomes life. Nova was never just a rescue story. She was a reminder that even the smallest spark can survive the darkest night if someone's willing to kneel beside it and never walk away.